I still wake up screaming some nights, feeling those hands pinning me down. 23 years later, and I can still hear my husband's laughter echoing in that basement as his father held me there. Nobody believed me at first, not the police, not my own mother, not even my sister who had warned me about him years before. They said I was making it up for attention, that I was trying to take his money, that I was the unstable one. But the bruises told a different story I escaped with. My daughter, when she was just 18 months old, nothing but a diaper bag and $43 hidden in my bra. We slept in my car for 9 days before I found the shelter. What happens when the family that should protect you becomes the prison you must escape? Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. And if you're a mother, stay strong. Leave subscribe. They say your life can change in a single moment. Mine changed the day I met James at my cousin's wedding. I was 22, working 2 jobs to put myself through community college. James was handsome, confident, and 8 years older. When he asked me to dance, I felt special in a way I never had before. You're different from other girls, he told me that night. You've got fire in your eyes. I grew up in a small town where most girls married young. My daddy left when I was 9, and Mama worked herself half to death at the textile factory. I promised myself I never depend on anyone the way she depended on him. James courted me like something out of an old movie. Flowers at work, notes on my windshield, always opening doors and pulling out chairs. My sister Bethany was the only one who seemed worried. He's too perfect, she said one night while helping me get ready for a date. Nobody's that perfect, Annie. I laughed it off. You're just jealous. The hurt in her eyes should have been my first warning. 3 months after we met, James proposed at the same venue where we first danced. Everyone clapped and cried happy tears. His parents were there, his mother quiet and smiling, his father watching me with eyes that seemed to be measuring something. Welcome to the family, his father said when he hugged me, holding on just a second too long. James has finally found himself a pretty one. The wedding was small but beautiful. James insisted we move to his hometown, 2 hours away from my family. My business is there, he explained. He owned a construction company he'd inherited from his father, who still kept an office there. You can get a job if you want, he told. Or stay home. Whatever makes you happy makes me happy. I believed him then. That's the thing about belief. It can blind you to what's right in front of you. The U-Haul truck that carried my belongings to our new home might as well have been carrying me away to a foreign country. I didn't know it yet. The first 3 months of marriage were everything I dreamed of. Our house was small but nice, in a neighborhood where people kept their lawns trimmed and waved when you drove by. James was attentive, always asking about my day and bringing home little surprises. I found a job as a receptionist at a dentist's office, and we settled into a rhythm. Looking back, I can see exactly when things started to shift. It was after our first dinner with his parents at their home. You talk too much, James said on. The drive home, his voice was light, almost teasing. Dad doesn't like chatty women. Oh, I said, suddenly self-conscious. I was just being friendly. And that dress was a little much, don't you think? A bit tight across the chest. I looked down at my simple blue dress, confused. Your mom said I looked nice. Mom's just being polite. He reached over and squeezed my knee. I'm just looking out for you, baby. Want to make sure they love you as much as I do. The next time we visited, I wore a looser dress and spoke only. When spoken to, James's father watched me all evening with a small smile that never reached his eyes. After that, James had opinions about everything: my clothes, my friends, how I spent money. Each suggestion came wrapped in concern, each criticism cushioned with a kiss. You don't need to talk to Bethany every day, do you? Those calls are expensive. That Melissa from your work sounds like drama. Maybe keep your distance. Let me handle the bills, baby. You don't need to worry your pretty head. By our 6-month anniversary, I barely recognized my life. My weekly calls to my sister became monthly. My work friends stopped inviting me to lunch. James had access to my paycheck, giving me an allowance for groceries and personal items. The night I discovered I was pregnant, James was overjoyed. He picked me up and spun me around the bathroom, my positive test still in my hand. "I'm going to be a daddy," he shouted, his face lit with genuine happiness. "You've made me the happiest man alive." That night, he called his parents to share the news. His father insisted they come over immediately to celebrate. "Now you're really part of the family," his father told me, placing his hand on my still flat stomach. "Nothing more important than family. We protect our own." As he said it, his fingers pressed slightly harder than necessary, and something in his eyes made my skin crawl. James watched us with a strange expression, something like pride mixed with something darker. I couldn't name, didn't know then, that I just received both a blessing and a threat on my pregnancy was difficult from the start. Constant nausea, dizziness, and a doctor concerned about my blood pressure. James insisted his mother drive me to appointments since he was too busy with work. "James tells me you're having a hard time," my mother-in-law said during one drive. "Pregnancy is difficult, but you mustn't complain too much. Men don't have patience for it." "I don't complain," I said, surprised. "I've been trying not to bother him with it." She gave me a sympathetic look. "That's not what he says, dear." At 4 months along, I started bleeding one night. James was out with clients, so I called him, terrified. "Can't you just drive yourself?" He asked, irritation clear in his voice. "The doctor said to call an ambulance if this happened." I cried. "Please come home." He hung up without answering. I called an ambulance, then his parents, since they lived closer. His father arrived first, driving me to the emergency room in tense silence. Hours later, the doctor confirmed the baby was okay, but I needed bed rest for at least a week. When we returned home past midnight, James was waiting, reeking of whiskey. "Do you know how embarrassing it was?" he slurred. "Getting called away because my wife can't handle a little spotting? James," his father warned, "she needs rest." "She needs to stop being so damn dramatic," James snapped, then grabbed my arm, yanking me toward him. "You made me look weak." I stumbled, falling against the coffee table. Pain shot through my side as I curled protectively around my belly. "Look what you made me do," James shouted as if I pulled myself down. His father stepped between us. "Enough. Go sleep it off." After James stomped upstairs, his father helped me to the couch. His hands lingered on my waist as he steadied me. "He doesn't mean it," he said. Quietly, the Davidson men have tempers, but we love hard too. "You just need to learn not to provoke him." "I didn't," he interrupted, finger pressing against my lips. "Family business stays in the family. You understand?" I nodded, too afraid and confused to speak. The way he looked at me, a mixture of threat and something hungrier, made me more afraid than James's anger had. After they left, I lay awake wondering how asking for help during a medical emergency counted as provoking my husband. I told myself it was a one-time thing. The stress of the pregnancy. The alcohol. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about so many things. Emma came into the world after 36 hours of labor. She was perfect 7 pounds of pink skin and wispy blonde hair. James cried when he held her, genuine tears that reminded me of the man I'd fallen in love with. "She's beautiful," he whispered, "just like her mama." For 6 blissful weeks, we existed in a bubble of newborn magic. James was attentive, handling midnight diaper changes and bringing me water during nursing sessions. His parents visited often, his mother bringing homemade meals, his father watching Emma with an intensity that made me hold her a little tighter. Then, James returned to work full-time, and the bubble burst. The first time he came home to a crying baby and no dinner ready. His face darkened in a way I'd learned to fear. "What exactly do you do all day?" he asked, voice dangerously quiet. I tried explaining about Emma's colic, about not having slept more than 2 hours straight, about the pediatrician's concerns with her weight gain. He listened silently then. Walked out, returning hours later with his father. "Dad's going to help around here," James announced. "Since you're struggling." His father moved into our guest room, temporarily. He fixed things around the house, mowed the lawn and watched Emma while I cooked or cleaned. His help came with comments that landed like slaps. A good mother wouldn't let her baby cry like that. In my day, women managed babies and households without all this fuss. No wonder James is stressed. Nan works all day and comes home to chaos. When I mentioned to James that his father made me uncomfortable, he exploded. Ungrateful. He's helping because you can't handle things. That night, he took my wallet, saying he'd manage the finances until I was thinking clearly again. When I protested, he grabbed my wrist, squeezing until tears sprang to my eyes. "This is for your own good," he said. Postpartum depression makes women irrational. I didn't have postpartum depression. What I had was growing fear and isolation. My mother-in-law visited less frequently, always looking past me when she spoke. Once, I caught her watching James grab me roughly by the elbow, her eyes immediately dropping to the floor. "Help me," I whispered when he left the room. "Every marriage has its adjustments," she replied, voice hollow. James has always been high-spirited, like his father. I realized then that she wouldn't or couldn't help me. Whatever happened in that house, she had endured something similar for decades. When Emma was 4 months old, I called Bethany in secret while James was at work and his father was in the garage. "Things aren't good," I admitted, voice shaking. "I think I made a mistake." "Come home," she said immediately. "I'll help you." But before I could say more, I heard footsteps. I quickly hung up, but not quickly enough. His father stood in the doorway, eyes cold. "Who were you talking to?" After being caught on the phone with Bethany, my already narrow world shrank to nothing. James installed a new phone that showed all outgoing calls. He claimed it was for budget reasons, but the message was clear. His father never mentioned catching me. But the next day, my car keys disappeared. James said he'd taken my car for servicing, but days turned into weeks with no mention of its return. "You don't go anywhere anyway," he said when I finally asked. "Emma's too young and it's winter." Emma was my only comfort. At 6 months old, she was smiling and babbling, her eyes tracking me around the room. I spoke to her constantly, telling her stories about the outside world as if they were fairy tales. One morning while giving Emma her bath, I noticed fingerprint bruises on my arms from where James had grabbed me the night before. I started crying, the reality of my situation crashing down on me. "What's this now?" His father stood in the bathroom doorway, arms crossed. "Nothing," I said quickly, covering my arms with a towel. He stepped closer, pulling the towel away. "James has a temper," he said, tracing one bruise with his finger. "Always has. But he'd never really hurt you." "He already is," I whispered. His grip on my wrist tightened. Family protects family. You're upsetting him with your moods, your complaints. Learn to manage him better. "Like your wife manages you?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Something flashed in his eyes, rage, then something worse. He leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear. "She knows her place," he whispered. "Time you learned yours." Emma started crying, a welcome interruption. He backed away, watching as I lifted her from the bath. Water soaked my shirt as I clutched her to my chest. A shield between us. That afternoon, I packed a small bag while both men were out, hiding it in Emma's closet. I didn't have a plan, just a desperate need for one. James came home early, catching me reorganizing Emma's clothes to hide the evidence. "Spring cleaning?" he asked, suspicion heavy in his voice. "Just sorting what doesn't fit her anymore," I lied. He seemed to accept this, but that night, he was rougher than usual in bed, leaving new bruises blooming beneath my NIG, HTG, OWN. The next day, I called the domestic violence hotline I'd seen advertised on a poster at Emma's pediatrician's office. The woman listened patiently as I whispered my situation. "We can help," she assured me. "There's a shelter." The line went dead. I turned to find James's father holding the disconnected cord, face twisted with anger. "Who are you calling?" He demanded. "The pediatrician," I stammered. "Emma has a rash." He didn't believe me. Within an hour, James came home, rage radiating from him in waves. You trying to make people think I'm some kind of monster? He shouted, backing me against the wall, calling for help like some victim. Emma wailed from her playpen, terrified by his voice. When I tried to go to her, he shoved me back, hard enough that my head hit the wall. Stars danced in my vision as I slid to the floor. James! His father's voice cut through the room. Not in front of the baby. I realized then that the objection wasn't to the violence, just to its audience. 2 weeks after my failed call to the hotline, James announced we were having his parents over for dinner to celebrate his father's birthday. I spent all day cleaning and cooking, Emma strapped to my hip as I worked. Everything needs to be perfect, James instructed. Dad's been stressed at work. By the time they arrived, the table was set with our wedding china, pot roast steaming in the center. His mother brought an expensive bottle of whiskey that the men opened immediately. Dinner was tense but civil. I barely ate, focused on keeping Emma quiet and content in her high chair. After the meal, his mother insisted on clearing the dishes. Alone, you boys catch up, she said with a practiced smile. I offered to help, desperate to escape the dining room, but James's hand on my thigh kept me seated. The whiskey flowed freely. With each glass, James grew louder, his father more intense. They discussed work, sports, politics, talking over and around me as if I weren't there. Remember the Henderson contract? His father said suddenly. That secretary who claimed you pressured her? James laughed. Trying to get money, that's all. Women, his father replied, eyes sliding to me. Always looking for an angle, aren't they, son? Something about the way he said it, the implication, the challenge in his stare made me stand up. I should check on Emma, I said, my voice barely audible. James grabbed my wrist. Sit down, we're talking. She's been fussy. I said sit. He yanked me down so hard the chair creaked beneath me. James, his mother called from the kitchen, voice trembling slightly. Could you help me with something? After he left, his father leaned toward me. You embarrass him when you act like this, he whispered, making a scene in front of family. I just wanted to check on my baby, I said, fighting tears. Always an excuse. His hand replaced James's on my thigh, fingers digging into flesh. You need to learn respect. I pulled away, standing quickly. I'm going upstairs. I didn't see him move, but suddenly he was behind me, pushing me toward the basement door. We need to talk. Privately. No, I protested, trying to twist away. James is busy, he finished, opening the door and forcing me down the first. Few steps. The basement was half finished, concrete floors cold through my socks. He backed me against the washing machine, too close, smelling of whiskey and cologne. My son deserves a respectful wife, he said. Not some whiny, ungrateful girl who can't handle a man's temper. Please, I whispered. Emma needs me. Emma needs a mother who knows her place. I tried to push past him, but he caught my arms, pinning them to my sides. His strength was shocking, his face inches from mine. Let me go. I twisted frantically, panic rising. That's when James appeared at the top of the stairs. Relief flooded me until I saw his expression. Not anger, not concern, amusement. Dad teaching you a lesson? He called down, leaning against the doorframe. James, please, I begged. Tell him to stop. His father's grip tightened painfully. She needs to understand how things work in this family. James descended the stairs, slowly, glass in hand. Seems like you've got it under control, he said, then laughed, a sound I'll never forget. Hollow and cruel, upstairs, Emma began to cry. The sound pierced me like a physical pain. Listen to that, his father hissed. Your baby crying while you're down here causing trouble. James just watched, sipping his whiskey as his father held me there, whispering threats and lessons. Emma's cries turned to desperate screams. They let me go only when she had cried herself hoarse. After the basement incident, something inside me shifted. A line had been crossed, and the illusion that things might improve shattered completely. Next morning, James acted as if nothing had happened. He kissed me goodbye, told me I was beautiful, promised to be home early. His father had left with his mother the night before, but not without a parting warning. Remember what we discussed. When James's car disappeared down the street, I curled up on the bathroom floor and sobbed while Emma napped. My arms were bruised in the shape of fingerprints, my spirit more damaged than my body. That afternoon, I called my mother for the first time in months. James had never explicitly forbidden contact with her, perhaps because he knew she posed no threat. She lived in her own world of denial. "Mama," I said when she answered, "I need help." "Annie, well, this is a surprise. How's that beautiful grandbaby?" "Mama, I'm in trouble. James, my voice broke. He hurts me. His father, too. I need to leave." The silence stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. "Annie," she finally said, voice strained, "marriage is hard work. Everyone has rough patches. This isn't a rough patch," I insisted. "I'm afraid. All the time." "What did you do to upset him?" she asked, and my heart sank. It was exactly what James's father had asked. "Nothing. I didn't do anything." She sighed heavily. "Men don't just get violent for no reason, Annie. Your daddy had a temper too, remember? But I never provoked him. The implication hung between us that I must have done something to deserve the treatment I received. Just like she believed she'd deserved my father's abuse. "Can I come stay with you?" I asked anyway, desperation overriding pride. "Just for a while." "Oh, honey, I don't have room in my apartment." "And James would be so angry if you just left." "Have you tried talking to him? Men need respect, Annie." I hung up, understanding now why she'd never left my father. She believed the lie that she somehow deserved the pain, that it was her failure rather than his cruelty. The next day, I called Bethany from a payphone during a rare trip to the grocery store. Emma bundled against the January cold. "It's worse than I thought," I told her, words tumbling out in a rush. "His father, I need to get out." "Come stay with me," she said immediately. "I'll help with Emma, help you get on your feet." For a moment, hope flickered. Then reality crashed back. He'd find me. "Your address is the first place he'd look. Then we'll go to the police," she insisted. "File a report, get a restraining order." I laughed bitterly. "With what proof? His father plays golf with the police chief." "Annie, please." "I'll figure something out," I interrupted, hearing the beep signaling my time was almost up. "I love you. Don't call the house." I hung up, terrified and oddly calm at the same time. The clarity of absolute desperation had settled over me. I had to leave, had to find a way out that wouldn't lead James straight to me. That night, when James asked about my day, I smiled and lied. I'd learned from his mother, from my own mother, how to vanish while still being present, how to plan in silence. If I was going to save Emma and myself, I would have to do it alone. For the next 3 weeks, I became an actress in my own home. I smiled more, complained less. I dressed the way James liked, cooked his favorite meals. When he grabbed me too hard or shouted over minor issues, I apologized quickly, eyes downcast in the submission he expected. "You're finally learning," he told me one night, almost gentle as he stroked my hair. "This is the wife I married." His father visited less frequently, seemingly satisfied that James had me under control. When he did come by, I was careful to be busy with Emma or household tasks, avoiding being alone with him. During this performance of docility, I planned. Each day while Emma napped, I gathered what we would need one item at a time, nothing that would be immediately missed. I saved a few dollars from grocery money, hiding them inside an empty diaper wipes container. I photocopied Emma's birth certificate and my ID during a trip to the library, ostensibly to get baby books. I packed a small bag with her favorite toy, changes of clothes, and diapers, concealing it beneath the winter coats we rarely used. The neighbor across the street, Mrs. Chun, became an unwitting ally. She was in her 70s, a widow who lived alone with 3 cats and a garden she tended even in winter. Sometimes she would wave when she saw me at the window, a small kindness that felt enormous in my isolated world. One afternoon, when James Was at work and Emma was fussy with teething pain, I took her for a walk, stopping when Mrs. Chen called out a greeting. "Your baby is growing so fast," she said, smiling at Emma. "But you look tired, dear." Something in her gentle concern broke through my carefully constructed facade. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. "Just not sleeping well," I managed to say. She studied my face, then the fading bruise on my wrist where my sleeve had ridden up. Her expression changed, understanding dawning. "My sister was married to a man like that," she said quietly, "for 23 years. I stiffened, panic. Rising. "I don't know what you mean. It's all right." She patted my arm gently. "Some things don't need to be said aloud to be understood." After that, she would sometimes leave books on our porch with notes inviting me to borrow them. Between the pages of a gardening manual, I found a business card for a women's shelter in the next county. In a cookbook, a $20 bill with a note for ingredients. She never said anything directly, never asked questions that might put me in danger if James discovered our interactions. But her silent support was a lifeline I clung to. The final piece of my plan fell into place when James announced he would be going on a fishing trip with clients due full days away. His father would be joining them. "You'll be okay alone?" James asked, though it wasn't really a question. "Of course," I said, eyes wide with practiced innocence. "Emma and I will be fine. You deserve some fun." That night, after he fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, heart pounding with the knowledge that my chance was coming. 2 days, 48 hours to disappear. I ran through the plan in my mind, again and again, searching for flaws or forgotten details, where we would go first, what name I would use, how to avoid leaving a trail. The biggest question remained unanswered. Where would we go after the initial escape? I had less than $100 saved, no credit card, no friends in the area. The shelter might be temporary safety, but what came after? As dawn broke, I made a decision. Some questions couldn't be answered yet. All that mattered was getting out alive. The night before James's fishing trip, everything fell apart. In Louisville, we transferred to a smaller bus heading south. By afternoon, we reached a small town whose name I'd chosen simply because it was far from anything James knew about me. The bus dropped us at a gas station on the edge of town, and we walked until we found a motel cheap enough to afford. The room was basic but clean, one bed, a bathroom with a tub, a small TV bolted to the dresser. I paid cash for 3 nights, giving a false name and saying my ID had been stolen. The desk clerk, a teenager with acne and kind eyes, didn't press for details. That night, I bathed Emma in the tub, watching her splash happily. Unaware of the magnitude of what we'd done, I fed her from the jar of baby food I'd packed, supplemented with mashed banana from the vending machine down the hall. When she finally fell asleep, I sat by the window, scanning the parking lot compulsively, jumping at every car that pulled. The $320 we had left wouldn't last long. I needed a job, a more permanent place to stay, a plan beyond simply being away from James. But first, I needed to know if he was looking for us yet. The next morning, I wrapped Emma warmly and walked to a small diner I'd spotted from the bus. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with bleached blonde hair and a name tag reading Darlene, cooed over Emma while I ordered the cheapest breakfast on the menu. "Your little girl is precious," she said, refilling my coffee cup. "You passing through or staying a while?" I hesitated, then decided on a version of the truth. "Starting over, my husband and I. It didn't work out." She nodded with immediate understanding. "Been there, honey. Got the divorce papers to prove it. Twice." When a television behind the counter switched to a morning news program, I tensed, half expecting to see my face on the screen, but there was nothing, just weather reports and local stories. "You looking for work?" Darlene asked as she brought my check. "'Cause Manny's short-handed since his niece went back to college. Nothing fancy, just bussing tables and maybe helping in the kitchen. Cash daily." The offer was so unexpected that tears sprang to my eyes. "I have my daughter," I said, gesturing to Emma in her high chair. "Manny's got a playpen in the back office. His grandbaby uses it when his daughter drops by." She shrugged. It ain't daycare, but it's something. 2 hours later, I was washing dishes in the diner's kitchen, Emma contentedly playing in the promised playpen where I could see her from my station. Manny, a heavy-set man with a booming laugh, asked few questions beyond whether I could work hard and start immediately. For 5 days, we existed in a holding pattern. I worked breakfast and lunch shifts at the diner, saved every dollar I could, and spent evenings with Emma in our motel room. I bought us new clothes at a thrift store, a prepaid cell phone with limited minutes, and a bus map of the entire region in case we needed to move quickly. On the 6th day, as I was clearing tables, during the mid-morning lull, I glanced up at the television and my blood froze. James's face filled the screen, his expression a perfect mask of worry and grief, as he stood beside a police officer. I couldn't hear the audio, but the caption beneath told me everything. Local businessman pleads for return of missing wife and infant daughter. Darlene came up behind me, following my gaze to the screen. Terrible thing, she said, shaking her head. Guy says his wife has postpartum psychosis, took off with their baby. They're worried she might hurt herself or the child. The room seemed to tilt around me. Postpartum psychosis. The perfect explanation for why I'd kidnapped my own child. Who would help a mentally unstable woman who might harm her baby? You okay, honey? Darlene asked, noticing my expression. You've gone white as a sheet. Fine, I managed. Just ... Sad story. I finished my shift in a fog of terror, checking on Emma every few minutes, as if James might materialize and snatch her away. That night, I packed our few belongings and paid for a cab to take us to the bus station. We couldn't stay any longer. James was hunting us, and he made sure the whole world would help him do it. We moved 3 more times in the next 2 weeks, never staying more than a few days in any location. Each motel was cheaper than the last, each town smaller and more remote. Our money dwindled despite my taking whatever work I could find dishwashing, cleaning motel rooms, anything that paid cash the same day. Emma adapted with remarkable resilience. Sleeping in strange beds, eating whatever I could afford, playing with makeshift toys. But I could see confusion in her eyes when she woke in yet another unfamiliar room, and it broke my heart. In a small Georgia town so tiny it barely appeared on maps, I found a women's shelter willing to take us without ID. The director, a former domestic violence victim herself, recognized the signs of someone on the run. You're safe here, she assured me. No one knows this place exists except the people who need it. For the first time since leaving, I slept through the night. Emma, in a crib beside my narrow bed in a room shared with another mother and child. The shelter had rules counseling sessions, chores, curfews, but also resources I desperately needed. Legal advice, childcare while I looked for work, and women who understood exactly what I was running from. A volunteer lawyer came weekly to help residents with restraining orders, divorce filings, and custody issues. When my turn came, I told her everything, including James's false claims about my mental health. This complicates things, she admitted, making notes in a worn leather portfolio. He's established a narrative that makes you look unstable and potentially dangerous. I'm not, I insisted, fear making my voice shake. I've never hurt Emma. I never would. I believe you, she said gently, but courts often favor the parent with resources, stability, community ties. Your husband has all of that, plus his father's influence. What can I do? Document everything. Every incident of abuse you can remember, with dates if possible. Any witnesses, even reluctant ones like your mother-in-law. Medical records if you have them. We need to establish that you fled to protect your child, not because you're unstable. I spent days writing my history with James, forcing myself to relive moments I tried to forget. The lawyer helped me file for an emergency protection order, using the shelter's address, and for temporary custody of Emma based on the documented abuse. When the court date was set, the shelter director drove me to the courthouse 2 counties away. Emma dressed in the nicest clothes we'd been able to find at the donation center. I was physically ill with fear as we entered the building, scanning every face for James or his father. The courtroom was small, with wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that hummed overhead. We sat in the back, the director holding Emma while I tried to stop my hands from shaking. When the bailiff called my case, I walked to the front on legs that felt disconnected from my body. The judge, an older woman with steel gray hair and reading, glasses perched on her nose, reviewed my filing silently. "Miss Davidson," she finally said, "these are serious allegations. Do you have any corroborating evidence beyond your written statement?" My lawyer presented photographs of bruises taken at the shelter, Emma's medical records showing a pattern of missed appointments, and a statement from Mrs. Chun that had arrived just that morning, a risk she'd taken that filled me with both gratitude and fear for her safety. Then the judge asked, "And the respondent?" "Not present, Your Honor," my lawyer replied. "We were unable to serve him as the petitioner does not know his current whereabouts." The judge frowned. "Without proper service, I cannot issue a permanent order." My heart sank, but she continued. "However, given the evidence presented, I will grant a temporary protection order for 30 days, during which time we will attempt service. I'm also granting temporary full custody of the minor child to the petitioner." Relief flooded me, but it was short-lived. That evening, as we prepared to return to the shelter, a police car pulled into the parking lot. 2 officers approached, faces grim. "Are you Anna Davidson?" one asked. I nodded, clutching Emma tighter. "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of custodial interference and child endangerment. Your husband has reported you took your child across state lines without permission." "But I just got custody," I protested, showing them the temporary order. "That's for this state, man." "He filed charges in your home state where he has legal custody by default since you left without a court agreement." As they led me away, Emma, screaming in the shelter director's arms, I realized the terrible truth. James had found us, and he was using the legal system, the very thing meant to protect us, as his newest weapon. If you've ever felt trapped in a system that was supposed to help you, leave a like. If you believe no mother should have to choose between her safety and her child, subscribe to our channel. This story isn't over, and neither is our fight. The holding cell was cold, the bench hard beneath me. I'd been separated from Emma for 6 hours, the longest we'd been apart since her birth. My body ached for her, breasts heavy with milk I couldn't give her, arms empty of her weight. The shelter's lawyer arrived near midnight, her face grim but determined. "We're fighting this," she said. "The jurisdiction is murky since you've established residency here. We've filed emergency motions." By morning, I was released on my own recognizance, with strict orders not to leave the county. Emma had spent the night with the shelter director, and our reunion left us both sobbing her from confusion, me from relief and fear. The legal battle that followed consumed the next 8 months. James hired expensive lawyers who painted me as unstable and vindictive. His father testified that he'd never seen any abuse, just a young mother who couldn't handle the pressures of parenthood. My mother, when subpoenaed, claimed she couldn't recall any conversations about abuse. Only Mrs. Chun stood firm in her written testimony, describing what she'd observed and James's reputation in the neighborhood. For her courage, her garden was vandalized. The word LIAR spray painted across her garage door. The court battles drained what little money I had. I found work at a daycare center that allowed Emma to stay with me, and we moved into a tiny apartment, subsidized by a domestic violence support program. Our home was sparse and mattress on the floor, kitchen items from the dollar store, toys donated by my coworkers, but it was ours, and it was safe. Each night after Emma fell asleep, I studied. For my GED, determined to build a life James couldn't destroy. When I passed the test 6 months after our escape, my coworkers threw a small party with cupcakes and balloons. Emma, now 2, clapped her hands in delight, not understanding why everyone was celebrating, but happy to be part of the joy. Therapy became my lifeline, a weekly hour where I could voice the fears that consumed me. My therapist, a soft-spoken woman named Diane, helped me understand that what had happened wasn't my fault. Abusers isolate their victims for a reason, she explained. They create a world where their reality becomes yours. I should have seen it coming, I insisted. There were signs. which were explained away, minimized, or followed by periods of remorse and kindness. That's how the cycle works. Slowly, I began to believe her. The nightmares didn't stop James and his father in the basement, hands pinning me down, laughter echoing, but they became less frequent. Emma had nightmares too, waking crying for no reason she could articulate. A child therapist helped her express through play what she couldn't in words, her dolls often hiding from the angry man, seeking safety in makeshift shelters under furniture. On Emma's second birthday, we celebrated with a small cake in our apartment. As she smeared frosting across her face, laughing, I took a photo of her first birthday picture not tainted by fear. I kept it by my bed, a reminder of why every struggle was worth it. That night, as I tucked her into her toddler bed, a garage sale find I'd sanded and repainted yellow, she put her small hand against my cheek. "Happy, Mama?" she asked, her vocabulary growing daily. "Yes, baby," I whispered, throat tight with emotion. "Mama's happy." It wasn't a lie. Despite the ongoing court battle, despite working 2 jobs to make ends meet, despite the constant vigilance, I had found moments of genuine happiness in our hard-won freedom. 3 years after our escape, the court finally granted me full custody of Emma. James's visitation rights were limited to supervised visits due to evidence that eventually mounted. Against him, a new girlfriend had come forward with her own abuse allegations, and his increasingly erratic behavior in court had worked against him. He never showed for the scheduled visitations. Part of me was relieved. Another part worried about what he might be planning. I'd found steady work as an administrative assistant at a small accounting firm where the owner, a grandmother of 4, allowed me flexibility for Emma's school schedule. We'd moved to a better apartment and Emma had started kindergarten, thriving among other children despite her earlier trauma. One autumn afternoon, I was picking Emma up from school when I saw him. James stood by the playground fence, older but unmistakable. Our eyes met across the schoolyard, and 5 years of relative safety shattered in an instant. I grabbed Emma's hand, hurrying her to our car while fumbling for my phone to call the police. She sensed my fear, her small body tensing beside me. "Mama, what's wrong?" "Nothing, sweetheart. We're just in a hurry." As I helped her into her booster seat, a shadow fell across us. I turned to find James standing there, close enough that I could smell the familiar cologne that still triggered my nightmares. "You can't run forever, Annie," he said, voice low. "You're still my wife. She's still my daughter." "The restraining order says you can't be within 500 feet of us," I replied, amazed at the steadiness of my voice. "I'm calling the police, always." "The victim?" he sneered. "Did you tell her what you did? How you took her away from her father, from her family?" Emma whimpered from inside the car, and something fierce rose within me. Not fear, but rage. Pure, protective rage. "You're not her family," I said, standing straighter. "You're the monster in her nightmares. The reason she couldn't sleep through the night until she was 4. The man who laughed while his father held down her mother." His face contorted with anger. "You lying bitch. Is there a problem here?" A deep voice interrupted us. Emma's teacher, Mr. Roberts, stood nearby, his cell phone visibly displaying 911 on the screen. James's expression shifted instantly, a mask of calm sliding into place. "Just talking to my wife about our daughter." "Ex-wife," I corrected. "And she has a restraining order against you." James looked between us, calculating his options as sirens wailed in the distance. Finally, he stepped back. "This isn't over," he said quietly, then turned and walked quickly toward the parking lot. Mr. Roberts stayed with us until the police arrived, giving his statement about what he'd witnessed. Emma sat silently in the car, eyes huge with confusion and fear. That night, after I tucked Emma into bed with extra stories and reassurances, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Annie?" His father's voice, older but still chilling. "This has gone on long enough." I nearly hung up, but something in his tone stopped me. He sounded defeated. "James is sick," he continued. "The doctors say the tumor is inoperable." I sat down heavily, emotions colliding within me, disbelief, suspicion. and something uncomfortably close to pity. Why are you telling me this? He wants to see Emma before ... He didn't finish the sentence. I know we don't deserve it, but I'm asking for my son. The man who had helped terrorize me was asking for mercy. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'll think about it, I said finally, and hung up. I didn't sleep that night, torn between years of justified fear and the uncomfortable weight of a choice I never wanted to make. Verified James's diagnosis through his lawyer a malignant brain tumor, already affecting his behavior and motor skills. The prognosis was 6 months at most. After much soul-searching and consultation with Emma's therapist, I decided not to tell her. At 5 years old, she had only fragmented memories of her father, most associated with fear and confusion. Introducing him as a dying man would serve him, not her. Instead, I wrote him a letter. I cannot and will not bring Emma to see you. Whatever closure you seek will not come through her. She is not an emotional support animal or a prop in your deathbed scene. She's a child who deserves protection, even from a dying father. His father called again after they received it, voice shaking with rage. After everything, you're still a heartless bitch. No, I replied calmly. I'm a mother. There's a difference. 6 months later, James died without ever seeing Emma again. I didn't tell her immediately, unsure how to explain death to a child who barely remembered the person. Her therapist advised honesty in simple terms when the time felt right. That moment came unexpectedly on a rainy Saturday when Emma found an old photo that had slipped behind my dresser, our wedding picture, the only one I kept to remind myself that the nightmare had been real. Who's that man with you, Mama? She asked, studying the smiling couple who looked like strangers to me now. I sat beside her on the bed. That's your father, Emma. She traced his face with her small finger. Where is he now? He died a few months ago. He was very sick. She considered this with the straightforward acceptance children often show for difficult truths. Was he a bad man? I remember shouting. My heart ached at the memory she'd carried. He wasn't kind to me. That's why we left when you were a baby. Did he hurt you? Her perception startled me. Yes, I answered honestly. But I made sure he couldn't hurt you. She leaned against me, small and warm. I'm glad we're safe now. As Emma grew, she occasionally asked questions about her father, prompted by father-daughter dances at school. Friends talking about their dads, normal childhood curiosity. I answered truthfully but age-appropriately, never demonizing James, but never romanticizing him either. When she was 8, I met David through a community college class. Kind and patient, he understood my wariness about relationships. Our courtship was slow, deliberately so, with clear boundaries and constant communication. Emma was guarded with him initially, watching our interactions with solemn eyes. One evening, after David had left following dinner at our apartment, she asked, "Is he going to be like my real dad?" "No, sweetheart," I assured her. "David is very different." "How do you know?" A fair question that deserved a thoughtful answer. Because I'm different now. I know what love is supposed to look like and what it's not supposed to look like. And I've learned that I deserve better than what happened for. Emma nodded, processing this. Me too, she said finally. I deserve better too. Hearing my daughter claim her worth so confidently brought tears to my eyes. The cycle was breaking. When David proposed 2 years later, I included Emma in the decision. We sat at our kitchen table, the three of us, discussing honestly what marriage would mean for our family. He's not trying to replace your father, I explained. No one can do that, but he loves you and he loves me. Emma, wise beyond her 10 years, considered this seriously. He doesn't yell and he listens when we talk. I think that's good. Out of the mouths of babes, the simplest measure of a good man. On our wedding day, Emma stood beside me, her first experience with a healthy marriage ceremony. As we exchanged vows, I caught her watching intently, learning that love could be gentle, respectful, kind. Breaking the cycle wasn't just about escaping James. It was about showing Emma what she should expect, what she deserved in every relationship. In her life, 2 years after James's death, I received a letter from a law firm representing his father. My first instinct was to throw it away, but something intuition or perhaps morbid curiosity made me open it. Inside was a formal notification. His father had been named in a lawsuit by 3 former employees of the construction company, all women alleging sexual harassment and assault spanning decades. My name was mentioned as a potential witness, given my relevant experience with the defendant. The paper trembled in my hands. Other women, of course, there had been others. I called the number listed for the plaintiff's attorney, a woman named Sarah Martinez. "I received your letter," I said when she answered, "about Richard Davidson." "Mrs. Davidson, or is it Mrs. Keller now?" she asked, clearly having done her research. "Keller," I confirmed. "David and I had married the previous summer." "We understand your situation is complicated," she continued. "Your experience isn't directly related to workplace harassment, but it establishes a pattern of behavior relevant to our case. What exactly would I need to do?" "Provide a deposition about your interactions with Richard Davidson. If the case goes to trial, possibly testify." I closed my eyes, imagining facing him again, feeling physically ill at the prospect. I need to think about it. That night, I discussed it with David, who supported whatever decision I made. "This is your healing journey, not mine. I'll stand with you either way." The deciding factor came unexpectedly from Emma, now 12, who overheard us talking. "Mom," she said from the doorway, "is this about Grandpa Richard?" I'd been honest with her about James as she grew older, but had shared less about his father. Wanting to spare her the worst details, "Yes," I admitted. "Some women are saying he hurt them, and they want me to tell my story too." She sat beside me on the couch, suddenly looking older than her years. "You always tell me to speak up when something's wrong." From the mouths of babes, again. My own words returning as wisdom. I agreed to the deposition, a grueling 6-hour session, where I recounted every interaction with Richard Davidson in clinical detail, the lingering touches, the basement incident, the threats veiled as family loyalty. The defense attorney tried to paint me as a vindictive ex-daughter-in-law, but the pattern was too clear when laid alongside the other women's stories. Richard Davidson settled the case before trial, a substantial sum paid with a non-disclosure agreement for the plaintiffs. But not for me. I hadn't sued for damages, only provided testimony. I was free to speak my truth, and I did. First in a support group for domestic violence survivors, then at a fundraiser for the shelter that had helped me, and finally in a written account published by a nonprofit supporting abuse victims. My story reached other women still trapped in situations like mine had been. I received letters, emails, sometimes tearful phone calls from strangers who found hope in knowing escape was possible. Emma watched my advocacy work with quiet pride. "You're like a superhero," she told me once, "but instead of a cape, you have your story." On the 10th anniversary of our escape, I received an unexpected message from James's mother. We hadn't spoken since his funeral, which I'd attended alone out of respect for the marriage we'd once had. Standing at the back while his father refused to acknowledge my presence. "Richard had a stroke," her message read. "He's in assisted living. Now, he can't speak anymore." A pause then. "I'm sorry I didn't help you." I was afraid too. It wasn't enough, could never be enough, but it was something. An acknowledgement that what happened had been real. That I hadn't been crazy or difficult or any of the things they'd called me. That night, I looked at photos of Emma at her middle school graduation, smiling confidently beside David and me. She'd grow into a perceptive, compassionate girl with a strong sense of justice and, most importantly, a bone-deep understanding of what healthy love looked like. That was my real victory. Not outliving James, not seeing his father diminished by illness, not even finding my voice as an advocate. My victory was breaking a cycle of abuse that might have continued for generations. 20-3 years have passed since that night in the basement when James laughed as his father held me down. 23 years of healing, rebuilding, and eventually thriving. Emma is 24 now, a counselor working with children who've experienced trauma. "You inspired me," she told me when she chose her career path. I want to help kids find their voice like you helped me find mine. I still wake up screaming sometimes. The nightmares less frequent, but never completely gone. David understands, holding you without questions until the terror subsides. After 15 years of marriage, he knows when to offer comfort and when to give space. Richard Davidson died 5 years ago. His last years spent unable to speak or move independently, a poetic justice I take no pleasure in but can't help but note. James's mother moved to Florida, occasionally sending birthday cards. To Emma that acknowledged the grandmother, role she failed to fulfill. My mother passed away without ever fully acknowledging what happened. Some people can't face truths that implicate their own choices, their own failures to protect. I've learned to forgive her, understanding that she was trapped in her own cycle of denial and fear. Bethany and I are close now. The sister bond healing. Once I was free to nurture it again. She's Emma's favorite aunt, the one who taught her to drive, to apply makeup, to demand respect in relationships. Last month, I spoke at a conference for domestic violence awareness. As I approached the podium, I saw a young woman in the back row, clutching a sleeping toddler while hanging on my every word. I recognized myself in her eyes, the desperation, the hope, the search for proof that escape was possible. After my speech, she waited until everyone else had left before approaching me. My husband's father. She began, then stopped, tears welling. They're so much alike, and they protect each other. I nodded, understanding instantly what she couldn't articulate. How did you find the courage? She whispered. I didn't feel courageous. I told her honestly. I felt terrified. But I realized one day that I was more afraid of my daughter growing up thinking that's what love looked like than I was of leaving. We talked for an hour, making a safety plan, connecting. Her with resources. As she left, toddler still sleeping against her shoulder, I saw determination replacing fear in her eyes. That night, I wrote in my journal, a practice I've maintained since therapy taught me the healing power of processing trauma through words. I wrote about the young mother, about Emma's success, about the long journey from victim to survivor to advocate. The path wasn't linear. There were setbacks, financial struggles, legal battles, nights spent questioning every decision. But looking back now, I see the subtle strength that grew with each challenge faced, each boundary established, each healthy relationship nurtured. If you're listening to this and recognizing your own story, know this: leaving is just the beginning. The real journey is reclaiming your voice, your autonomy, your belief in your own worth. It's hard, messy work that doesn't happen overnight, but it's possible. I'm living proof of that. 23 years after I fled with nothing but a diaper, bag, and $43, I've built a life filled with genuine love, mutual respect, and hard-earned peace. If my story has touched you, subscribe to this channel for more survivor stories that prove there's life beautiful, authentic life after abuse.